Okay, folks, just testing something there, making sure of something. But with movies lately and everything, throughout the history of movies, television shows, you name it, sometimes we've always thought to ourselves, what if this was played out on the screens? How would people react? What if we decided to do this? How would people react? What would their thoughts be? Well, quite frankly, sometimes the thoughts of the moviegoer or the television viewer or even the reader of a comic book or whatever, sometimes when they see something happen, the first thing that will go through their minds when they see something happen that, well, is pretty much, to quote what the nostalgia critic sometimes says, or uses as an example in his reviews, and God forgive me for saying this, Lord forgive me for saying this, but most of the time what goes through a person's mind is a major mindfuck. And the reason a major mindfuck goes through a person's mind is because they start having that WTF moment when they see these things. And the WTF being, excuse my language again, Lord, and I apologize for this, what the fuck, basically that's what WTF stands for, what the fuck, because basically that's the question that comes to their minds of, what the fuck did I just see, and did this movie just play a mindfuck on me, or did this show just play a mindfuck on me, or did this book that I'm reading, or this comic, did they play a mindfuck on me, because what the fuck did I see? And again, this is something that has been going on since the advent of cinema, including animation shorts and stuff. But, with that said, it's one of those situations where you think to yourself, or you ask yourself, what were those people on? Were they tripping? What were they on? Did they, just checking something. But, you ask yourself, what were those people thinking? Were they on some kind of acid trip? What were they smoking? What was going through their minds at the thought of the process? Because, like I said, throughout history of cinema and television and even comics and novels and all that, people always ask that question of what were people thinking? And it goes back all the way, like I said, to the beginning of cinema and even to the advent of those little feature shorts, serials, if you will, and in the case of animation through Warner Brothers, MGM, and Disney, sometimes once in a while you would get these kind of things that you wouldn't expect. I can recall, honestly, from my own personal experience, and you can actually see a clip of it here on YouTube under WTF. I can recall watching the Donald Duck cartoon from the 1940s when it aired on Disney Channel for the first time as a kid. I remember watching Duck Pimples. And the one scene that stuck in my mind throughout that film, or throughout watching that short, was not only was it a mindfuck in a sense, even for a young kid, and probably even for those back in the 1940s that saw it in the theaters, but for me, it was a mindfuck because there was one scene in there that totally was a WTF what the fuck moment. And that moment was when the female in that short, I can't think of her name right now, they gave her a name, and I can't think of it right now. But the female in that short, as some people call it, the pre-Jessica Rabbit-like character in Duck Pimples, the WTF moment happened when she's looking for her pearls. She thinks she spots them in the back pocket of a detective or an inspector that's supposedly helping with the case. And instead of not finding them, she finds handcuffs. Instead of finding her pearls, she finds handcuffs. But basically, the WTF moment, trying to get to what I'm trying to say here, happens right afterwards when she basically says, basically says, "Oh bother," and then climbs up and under the freaking trench coat of the inspector/detective, and then just lays there. I mean, basically, you see these two big old lumps, one representing her head, one representing her backside, and then they just settle into two small lumps, and then goes flat, and then that goes flat as if now she's just suddenly merged with the guy and become part of his body. And that leads to a big mind fuck, a big WTF, which I entitled the clip as here on my channel. Because then all of a sudden you see her hand stick out. She's doing like a little magic trick, like pull the rabbit out of the hat with the inspector's hat, puts the hat back down, and then when the guy's calling for one of his assistants, you see her hand come out like this and kind of be like as you're shouting, going like, "Hey," you know that, right? Her arm comes out with her hand, and her hand goes like this in front of at the side of his mouth, while he's doing this, acting like a third hand. And then, when he's reading the business card of his assistant, she basically is scratching his chin, while the other hand is putting on the glasses, acting like two extra pairs of hands. And it's like, what the fuck? It's like, what were these guys thinking? Were they on some kind of acid trip at the time? Even though acid trips really didn't become something of the norm until about the 60s and 70s. What were they thinking? Because honestly, even in cartoon shorts back then and now, if something like that happens to a character, the character more along the lines will notice and do something. It's like, what were they thinking to have the character, who turns out to be the villain, by the way, the thief, if you will, what were they thinking of not having the guy know that he had an extra pair of hands, and oh, by the way, those extra arms and hands were females. He's looking for the lady thinking she's kidnapped, and yet they don't put in the fact, they don't add into the story that, oh, by the way, the female's on your freaking back. And again, she acts like an additional pair of arms and hands, like she's merged with the guy. Like she got absorbed into the guy's body or something. Even though she pops her head up immediately after he reads the card. It's like, pops her head up out of the back of his trench coat, like after he reads the card, and after Donald drops these hot irons back into the book. It's like, honestly, what the heck? And again, these are one of these moments that make you think, why? What were they thinking? What were they thinking that come up with these WTF moments, these mind fucks? What were they thinking? And then if you think that's something, how about the lustful milk gag? I've talked about this on camera, and I've talked about it through text on DeviantArt and other places. But again, what were they thinking coming up with this? I understand through animation you want to have a visual representation of something that in real life can never really happen on camera. So through animation, you are provided with that opportunity to visually see what that character is feeling or what that character feels like in animation form. So it helps out. But again, what were they thinking when back in the 1940s, if not earlier than that, they come up with the lustful milk gag of having a female character freaking melt into a puddle? Swoota Crooner is the earliest exception that I know of. And true, we've seen various examples elsewhere. And for anybody that wants to know what the lustful milk gag means in reality, even those that run TV tropes, the lustful milk gag basically is when a character, male or female, melts into a complete puddle. Not just halfway through or part of their body flattens out and looks like they're melting. No, they melt into a complete freaking puddle. And no, not somebody going on top of other people acting out a freaking orgy or anything like that. No. Or even doing a variant because they see some kind of collectible figure they want. No, none of that. It's basically when a female or male character gets amored or attracted to another character of the same gender, that it causes them to melt into a puddle. And basically animation allows that to happen from a visual standpoint. But again, it's like, what were they thinking when they came up with that gag? What was the person thinking at the time? Like, okay, we got this Frank Sinatra-like character, because a lot of characterizations of famous singers and actors and actresses back then were the norm. So you had this Frank Sinatra-like rooster, and all of a sudden one of the hens melts into a puddle, and all you see is like a little mohawk or whatever thing, a little quills, little red quills sticking up, and that's it. And she's nothing, and all she is now is nothing more than a shaky black puddle, black melted puddle, like rippling and all that. And it's like, what were they thinking when they came up with that? And again, like I said, we've seen that probably in earlier examples and later examples. Heck, I'll give you another later example. Popeye. Now I'm not counting Fistic Mystic, because of the fact that when Olive melted, she didn't melt, she just turned yellow and did the get run over by piano deal going down the stairs. That's what she did. The pancake kind of deal. The one I'm talking about is Parlez-vous Woos. And again, just like with duck pimples, when I saw that, not only did it make me a fan of the gag, and it did, but when I saw that, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, these characters are supposed to be human, yet visually, you know, because when you think back on it, and even as a kid you think this, you think, well, these characters are portrayed as humans in this cartoon, but visually I just saw the main love interest, who many have dubbed probably is the more attractive, probably the more prettiest, if not Disney-like in a sense, a rendition of Olive, and I know that sounds crazy to say, of Olive Oyl in any Popeye short, period. All of a sudden we see her melt into a puddle of melt into a pool of melted butter that's flowing, running down the floor, and all you see is her eyes and a smile. That's it. All you see is her eyes and a smile. And as she's flowing down the floor, later on, if you watch it as you get older, you notice that there's little dry spots coming up around her, and you're thinking, that's how they're ending it? What the fuck were they thinking? Why end it like that? You could have had that done in the middle of the freaking cartoon when Bluto kissed her, and it would have made more sense. You could have had Popeye come in, scoop her up, dump her back out, and there you go. It's like, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? I mean, I understand some of the Popeye shorts, even back when Fleischer Studios did it, okay, Max Fleischer and all of them did it. Yeah, some of them were WTF moments as well. And when Paramount and King Features got a hold of it, that was continued on, but in a more toony style. But still, it's like, you look at that, you look at Suna Crooner, you look at all these moments that I've talked about, and you think, what in the world were these people thinking? I mean, even The Simpsons, for as long as they've been on the air, have had the WTF moments. They have. They've had the WTF moments. Let's not deny that. Even Futurama's had them. Family Guy's had them. They've all had those mindfuck WTF moments where you think, what were these people thinking? What were they smoking? You know? And there have even been features, live action and mostly animation throughout the 60s and 70s where you've had these kind of moments, where you've had these WTF mindfuck moments with movies. Ralph Bakshi is probably one of the biggest examples of this with movies like American Pop, Cookskin, what is the other one? Hey, Good Looking. You know, even Fritz the Cat. But mostly the first thing I talked about are probably one of the biggest, probably some of the biggest WTF mindfuck movies you could think of. And even some people will put Richard Williams, Stephen the Cobbler at times with a, you know, recobbled cut, which everybody suggests you watch, and even I do, as well as even the Miramax version, people sometimes look at that and they think, what the fuck were they thinking with some of these scenes? Even when Richard Williams did Raggedy Ann and Andy and did their movie. It's like, what was this guy tripping on? What were they thinking? You know, there's been so many various moments like that. You know, like I said, even in animation, through television series, animated television series, you think that. You know, back in the 80s, I can recall several times, I've seen several episodes of shows that I grew up on, and I know some people will agree on that, even though they were one-shot deals, a part of a continuity or whatever, you had situations happen to the characters that made you think that even if it was a one-shot, a part of the continuity, and it was just for that episode, it made you think, and looking back on it, it made you think, what were the writers thinking? You know, what the fuck were they on? Why did they give us this kind of a mind fuck of an episode? It didn't make any sense. It really didn't. You know, it's all those kind of situations. When you think about it, it's like, what were people thinking? Why would they come up with things like this? It's like it didn't make any sense. Again, like even if it was for one short or for one shot deal, it had nothing to do with the continuity, or if it was for just that one episode, and whatever happened to said characters got restored, and it was part of the continuity, and it was referenced probably later on in an episode or two. It's like, what were they thinking? Why would they come up with this kind of stuff? Those kind of situations. Heck, even with Cartoon Network, you had shows that they did, like Powerpuff Girls have had these kind of situations. Dexter's Laboratory has had it. I remember there were several shorts. Two in particular, where Dee Dee, and I actually have these episodes on DVD, courtesy of a friend at iOffer, because I wanted to see, because these things make great conversation pieces, in a sense, because you wonder what the writers were thinking when they came up with this. Okay, you have one episode where Dee Dee merges, thanks to one of Dexter's inventions, merges with the car, and basically, she gets restored to normal by being farted out of the exhaust pipe at the back of the car. Basically, her car form that she merges and becomes with the car farts her out of the exhaust pipe in the back of the car. But yet, the car is still in the shape, and it still has the color and look of Dee Dee on it. Still has a facial feature probably on the front, and you're thinking, what were they thinking coming up with that episode? If you're going to restore Dee Dee, what were you thinking leaving the car the same freaking color as she is, and kind of hinting at the folks that, something doesn't seem right. Why is the radio on the girly station, and why does the car freaking look like Dee Dee? It's like, what were they thinking? And then Dee Dee's tail. Dee Dee's tail is another one. It's like, what were they thinking with this one? Because just like with the car one, she got turned into something other than human. Now, the car one, she got restored because, like I said, she got farted out of the freaking exhaust pipe in the back of the car. Here, she goes through a freaking phase where she wants to become like one of the My Little Pony knockoffs that they were parodying in the show. Or whatever they were called, Pony Princesses, or whatever they were, Pony Princesses or something. She wants to be like them. So Dexter, seeing the potential of not only could he study about horses and how they work, he grants her wish. He has a freaking machine, actually, that allows this to happen. He grants her wish. She gets turned into a pink horse, which a lot of people pretty much, if you're furry or not, felt is the more attractive look for Dee Dee, because she looks more beautiful and attractive this way. I don't know. But overall, at the end of this, she doesn't get freaking restored. No, at the end of Dee Dee's tale, she gets to run off and be free like a regular pony, a princess pony, or My Little Pony knockoff character,